Hello, and welcome to the Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and today I have a beautiful guest with me, Monica Skrzypczak, and I didn't mess up your name.
Nope.
And it and I am just really excited for you to come to know about the work that she does because it is so important for our life of discipleship. So, without further ado, Monica, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a joy. And I ran into you at the Seek conference back in the beginning of the year. And one of the things that so impressed me was just kind of the variety of different work that you did. And but that just kind of drew me. And then when I was speaking to you, you're like, yeah, I'd be open to, coming on your podcast. So I reached out and you were gracious enough to say yes.
Yes.
But that being said, before we jump into your actual work, I'd love to be able to have our listeners know a little bit about your own faith journey and kind of how you came to be doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So I was cradle Catholic, born and raised. Never had a super deep faith. Really until college when I was at the Focus conferences and meeting the Focus missionaries. They really helped me get into Bible study and deepen my love of the Lord. And through that, I realized not only did I really love art enough to want to pursue it, but that I wanted to do something for the Lord. And I didn't know what it would be at the time. So junior year of college was really a time of just thought and just, I don't know what I want to do, God, where do you want me? I applied to be a Focus missionary. They didn't accept me. And I was like, oh no, what even am I supposed to do? I got my degree in theater production and management, which isn't
Mm.
related to art in the slightest, not related to Catholicism in the slightest. And so after college, I was in a situation where I didn't have a job, going to Poland for a month after graduation. So just like, how do you get a job lined up like that? And in Poland, I was just surrounded by so much sacred art that my
Mm.
soul was just, every church I got into was just like crying out, like, we need this in America. We don't have anything like this in America. We don't have beauty. It's not important in our sacred spaces. And I was just like, Jesus, we need sacred artists. And if you want me to be one, sure. I let me know how to do it. And so when I got home, I started researching how to do a small business, how to do art, and I wanted to just do something small on the side, get something started, then get a theater job, because I knew if I didn't start something now, like I would never have time when I got into adult life. But in the process of figuring out how to do a small business, I fell in love with it, and it brought so much joy and peace and happiness just to create and to share those creations with other people. So yeah, I just kind of hit the ground running and never stopped, and here I am. It's been about 4 years, so that's where I'm at.
Oh, beautiful. And most beautiful that you stepped out in trust in order to do that. And
There's
so
a reason it's called Outpouring of Trust.
there we go. There we go. So share that a little bit about how
Yeah.
did that name and everything come together for you then?
I agonized over names for so long, for years, because it was a thought I would do something with art, and I agonized because Skrzypczak, if you don't know how to spell it, it isn't complicated as all else. Possible to say, possible to pronounce, impossible to spell. Like, it just was the worst.
Mhm.
So I knew I needed a business name, and trust that year was really coming up in prayer, that I just was resisting trust. I needed more trust. And this whole thing ended up, I love the word outpouring as well. And everyone keeps thinking outpouring of love, not outpouring of love, outpouring of trust, because it's just us giving our trust over to God in like this
Mm.
outpouring of ourselves. And then he takes it and uses it as he wills. And
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of encompassed my emotions towards starting a business, but it's also just like so relevant for everybody too. So it worked out.
No, absolutely. And one of the things I have to ask, so being in Poland, and Saint Faustina, and coming out of Poland, and trust, and any connection there?
Not overtly, but I do love Saint Faustina. So I'm sure
Yeah.
she had a huge hand in guiding that.
Most wonderful, most wonderful. So we're kind of talking around it a little bit. You've spoken about sacred art. You've spoken about, being an artist and outpouring of trust, which is your business. So tell people exactly what it is that you do, and then also maybe share a little bit about what you're hoping to do through your work.
Yeah, so I do sacred art, primarily oil painting. So painting, initially it started with just the Eucharist because I was terrible at painting faces and thought that that's okay, I just won't do it. But over the years, Jesus kind of guided me, being like, okay, well, the saints and, maybe Jesus, Mary, it'd be good to paint people. Um, so growing in that, and then I also create rosaries, rosary bracelets, and different chaplets that people have suggested over the years, really just to guide people to Our Lady, guide people to Jesus. The Eucharist especially was always really important in my life. And in the future, I'm working on this 49 series painting of Mary based on the Litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is like my big end goal kind of project that kind of just, it works on the side. Just, I love Our Lady and I want to bring people more close to her, and the litany in particular, delving in on those titles of Mary that a lot of them are really weird.
Mhm.
You're like a Tower of Ivory, Tower of David, yes, okay. And just kind of figure out what are the virtues, what are the attributes of Mary that the church has given us in this litany, and making them into visual form. So
Wow. I look forward to seeing that.
it'll be years, but it'll be great.
That's okay. Life work,
Yeah.
so that's just amazing. I too, when I've gone through the litany of Mary, I've kind of done the okay,
Hmm.
but I also know it's scriptural references, of course, and
Yeah.
the deep prophetic images that were used in order
Yes.
to
So
and then
many Old Testament symbols come out in the litany, and you're like, that was Mary? This is Mary? Oh, okay. It's just
Mhm.
it's got so much depth to it.
Yeah, well, especially when you think about the fact that it's, the new Adam and the new Eve. And
Yes.
Mary, of course, is that new Eve. And therefore, yeah, a lot of that imagery is, prophetically, pointing towards her, just as
Yeah.
it was pointing towards Jesus. And I think sometimes we miss that. I know Father Mike Smith's Bible in a Year delves into here and there those different points, but I'd love to maybe that's something that that's the next thing. I've been reading a book about she's venerable only, Mary of Agreda, but definitely a saint. I don't know if you've ever run
Miller.
into, yeah. So Mary of Agreda, she actually was the one who wrote the Mystical City of God, which is the story
Oh,
of Blessed Mary's Virgin Mary's life. And but when she was writing it, it was during the time of the Inquisition, so there was all sorts of controversy about this, because this was before they actually proclaimed the dogma of the Immaculate Conception and of course her Assumption. So
yeah.
therefore, as you're hearing about Mary's in heaven and this is what's she's going to, and people are like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm reading this and I'm just like, okay, next book is The Mystical City of God, but into that is so much imagery and so much Mary Agreda actually was known for bilocution, bilocated, and she actually evangelized the Southwest Native American peoples during when they were just
Yes.
going there in the
That's
1500s.
her?
The Mary, the lady in blue. Yeah,
Yes. Oh, I just
yeah,
heard that story. For
yeah,
years, I thought it was Mary, right? Lady in Blue, and nobody ever explained to me that it's a saint too who taught the
mhm,
natives about Mary and
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, interesting, like I said, she's only venerable because she's not a saint yet, and partially that was because her writings were on and off again the forbidden books, because the Inquisition, because they're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not right, and so you just kind of have to smile. So,
Yeah.
um,
She
you
also
know,
doesn't have miracles then either, so we're waiting on miracles for blessed,
well,
and
yeah, I'm betting that there probably are,
they're just kind
but
of
no
fishing out.
one has been able to come forward and say, yeah, I intentionally, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to I would be willing to bet that especially the Southwest Native American people probably experience miracles, but
Yeah. Yeah.
back, they wouldn't know
The
that they should
Vatican
tell
likes
anyone.
full documentation over these things.
Yep,
So it takes time.
exactly. Uh,
One day
well,
she will be.
awesome. Well, I'm glad with your devotion to Mary, I was able to kind of, open up another doorway there for you, to come to know her more deeply. So all of it is tied though to beauty. And that's something you speak about on your website. And I was telling you before we got on, how much I appreciated you speaking about beauty. So for you, how do you see beauty, being brought about through your work specifically?
Well, um, yeah, through the rosaries in particular, I think crafting something that is both beautiful and practical,
Mm,
and it's something that is for Mary and for devotion. Because for sacred art in general, it's always beauty at the service of God. And so in our churches, like the church teaches like there is no upper limit of how too much honor for God in his church.
mhm,
Like you can go as far as possible and it's still not enough because God is still more glorious and more majestic than we could ever hope to share in the physical realm. And so doing that in like a small scale with a small devotional item like the rosary, and then with my art, as I can, still
mhm,
learning, but just sharing that, and especially like bringing it into your own home. A lot of my art,
mhm.
especially like in the current stage, is for the people. I haven't done anything for the church yet. God willing, that will happen, but not yet. So it's just like devotional items for your home to create a more prayerful space. A lot of people talk about the church being the domestic church, the home being the domestic church. And so bringing Christ into the center of family life and just the day to day. Yeah.
Yeah. No, one of the things, I mean, you already made mention of the need we have for art in our sacred spaces.
Yeah,
And
I love
I,
it.
yeah, so I think, and you also, you just spoke about the fact that there's nothing that is too grand for God, in the space where he is. I mean, if we truly believe that he's sitting there in the tabernacle, how can we be happy with a plain Jane kind of,
Yeah, whitewashed
painted,
walls.
and so I totally get what you're saying, but so often I think, we fall prey maybe into that criticism that so many people have about church, Catholic Church in particular, of it has all of this, gold and ornamentation and everything, and doesn't that draw away from worship? What
I
would
would
your
say
response
I would
be?
say never, no, and not at all. Well, I mean, as an artistic person, I always have loved beauty. But growing up, our church here is a simple 60s brick church. And like that didn't impede my devotion to the Eucharist growing up. I mean, I had a huge devotion from as long as I can remember, pretty much. But seeing beauty like in Rome and in Poland, and it just the outpouring, it's an outpouring of love, to bring outpouring back, of the people towards God, because the churches are never founded or like ornamented by the church's money, right? Like it's the donations by the people 100% fund all of these churches. I've been doing a lot of pilgrimages in local, like in United States, just finding beauty here. And
Right.
there actually are quite a few. It's lovely. They're just not that common. But there's a lot of like immigrant churches where these families came over, they had no money, but they were Catholic and they wanted a beautiful church. So they scrimped and saved and gave to the church. And those are some of the most beautiful churches that we have in America. Um, and so it's not like, yeah, it's not a waste of money because it also endures, and I don't know, it elevates it. I have everything positive to say about using the church for beauty. And just like the more that we love God, the more that we want to love others and to serve others. So like it's for my mind, a direct correlation towards service, like in the community as well.
Mm,
And Jesus says like we'll always have the poor, but you're not going to always have me in the Bible. And so it's like you every once in a while you pour money into the church to make it look beautiful, and then the rest of the time, the year, generations later, like you pour out it into the community, but like never pouring anything into the church. Like where are you giving your first fruits? I don't
mhm.
know, I could rant for a while.
No, I mean, and it's not a rant. It's, things that so often we don't think about. And I think a lot of it is because, especially the American church. I joke, I'm a convert, so I joke about the fact that we're actually Protestant Catholics for the most part, and where we're so influenced by this Protestant idea of quote simplicity and starkness, this Puritan
Our
idea
nation was
of,
founded on Protestantism. It's not that confusing that we end up being that way, but
yeah. But even so, it's something of where we hesitate to draw attention.
Good word. Yeah.
And so it's something of where you're actually up in Rockford, Illinois, near Chicago. And so isn't I forgot the name, Maximilian Kolbe's, there's a shrine up there.
Yes.
Yeah, near Mundelein Seminary.
Yeah, in near Mundelein. Yes. There's
Mm-hmm.
also I haven't been to that one. I don't know how. We'll get
Oh,
there
you
eventually.
need to go.
I need to go. There's
Oh.
some weird shrines that I just like have missed on my journey. I'll get to them. But
No, you
Chicago in
definitely
general
need to
has a
go.
lot of stunning churches. So it is a treat to go out and pilgrimage to them.
Oh, absolutely. I have to, say, have you been up to Jesu Church in downtown Milwaukee?
Milwaukee hasn't been on my list yet either that much.
I was gonna say, okay, so here you go. So you
I
have
feel like my pilgrimaging is very obscure.
That's okay.
But it's there.
Yeah, but that was a huge piece for me coming to the church.
Amazing.
Was so Jesu.
I've seen pictures of it, yes.
And yeah, I mean, so these beautiful rose windows. I mean, the statues. I mean, it's 3 stories tall. As you're going in, and and you get, and I mean, I just remember the first time I walked in, and I was just like, oh my gosh,
yes.
and I was overwhelmed in wonder, at it, rather than appalled that we have these beautiful things here.
Yeah.
It wasn't like no beauty, no, this is bad. But so often we don't allow ourselves to enter into experiencing the beautiful, and it's the experiencing of the beautiful that truly uplifts us, as you said, not just towards worship of God, but uplifts us in our own nature of who God created us to be.
Yeah.
We come to realize that we are more than just our physical selves.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. We're just, yeah.
So real simply, I guess I would want to know, what have you found to be either most challenging or rewarding for you as you've been doing your work?
I think it's almost hand in hand, but like sharing on Instagram is where I've got all my growth, and all my audience comes from online in various places. And just kind of dealing with the isolation of creating content by yourself and then putting it out there for people to see, and the criticisms or positives, that can be really difficult. And just like being an artist by yourself is like, it's kind of hard, but it's part of the life that doesn't have to be totally terrible. It's just a challenge with it. But then the blessing in the same realm is exactly like the Instagram and the communities that I've come to know, different patrons of my art that I've just come to become good friends with, other artists. So there's like the positive is also the negative, and the negative is the positive. They kind of feed into each other.
Yeah, they do. It's pretty amazing, and I think we discovered that particularly, like during the holy season of Lent, for example, of how it is that it is through our woundedness that God brings the greatest beauty and and redemption, of course. And that's what we focus upon is Jesus's great work, which was all about his woundedness, all about his being crushed and his suffering and death. But then what comes out? The most beautiful thing that we never could have imagined, the resurrection and the glorified life. So yeah, I understand what you mean. It's definitely tied together. How do you think your work is helping you on your own journey towards becoming a saint?
So much, so much in like humility, and commitment, and just sticking with, especially prayer life, just the same practice that goes into showing up to the canvas every day and painting and coming back and crafting a piece of art from a white canvas to final thing, goes into a prayer life. Like, you have to show up to the chapel or the mass or just to prayer, wherever you pray, consistently. And through that consistent growth, you become the work of art that God created you to become, and the saint that God created you to become. So like, there's always parallels, and I can tell when my prayer life needs help, when I'm not painting enough and just going back and forth.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think
Mm.
about it all the time.
I can so identify with that because, I'm a writer, and it's the same exact thing of where it's just kind of like when I'm not being inspired and it's like it's not there. It doesn't mean that even with an idea, it's still difficult to create. And that's
Yes.
that's what so many people don't realize. So you really do have to show up consistently. But the other part is that I can tell when the well is running dry, and I realize, oh my gosh, I've been relying on me rather than on him.
Yeah.
And I need to like just go and immerse myself into that fountain of graces and just get, so that it does become, and we'll use your words, an outpouring of his love and mercy out into the world rather than my own. And
Yes.
so that's awesome.
It is
So,
so huge.
mm,
The connection of prayer life to like the act of any creation is so vital.
mm,
Yeah.
I think so many people don't make that connection.
No, I feel like it's not obvious to make until you
Mhm.
try doing it hand in hand. And then you're like, how can you create it any other way?
Mm. Yeah, you need to be tapped into the creator, who
Yes.
is the fount of all creation, in order to be a part of that creative process. And that's definitely a place where I found great joy for myself is being able to be a part of that creation. And all the, who am I to write this or share this or whatever, and it gets put to the side because it's like, no, our Lord makes it clear, no, this is what I'm asking you to do. Doesn't matter whether or not you can see why it has rhyme or reason, or whether or not, somebody is doing something similar and it seems bigger, better, and, why bother? But I've asked you to do this. So you need to be faithful to what I tell you to be faithful in.
Oh, that's so
And
beautiful. Yes. Oh, yes. I can see that in my own life too.
so into the midst of that, then what's the one, idea or maybe habit or practice that's been key for you as you've been living out, this creative life, but also in your own spiritual life? What's been that one thing that's like non-negotiable? Mhm.
I think it comes at daily adoration. Especially
Mm,
like recently it's been very not daily and I'm suffering for it. And like, I understand like that is the daily prayer aspect of this is the vital aspect of it. And every time I let it slide to the wayside, I'm like, no, I just need to get this thing finished. I have this deadline that's more important than prayer. Like,
mhm.
give it a few weeks and then I'm like, no, prayer is actually the most vital part, which I mean, it makes sense. It's the easy answer, but particularly adoration, if I'm going to pick any part of prayer.
Mm.
My favorite.
Beautiful. Well, obviously, you are nearby an adoration chapel of some
Yes.
sort.
We have a
Mm.
perpetual adoration chapel at my church, so very helpful.
What a grace. So
Yes.
there's only two places in our entire diocese that are perpetual.
That's what
And
I'm noticing. It's like, oh, it's actually very not common.
yeah.
And what a gift to be so close to one.
Hmm. No coincidences, eh?
No, he
Hmm.
ordains all things.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we are blessed in our own local community in that our pastor is passionate about adoration. And so we have it works out that it's 3 hours every week that we have. And our community, I mean, it's, so we have a Tuesday night, a Thursday morning, and then on the weekend it's either Saturday night after mass, or of course you got First Friday, First Saturday, but our community comes, and we've got 50, 60 people there, and it's not just people, it's families, and
Yes.
they're coming and they're just being quiet. And I personally think one of the biggest reasons is because Father, it's not that confession isn't important, but he's like, no. So on Tuesdays and Thursday he's with us, He comes, he
Mm,
exposes Jesus, and then he comes and he sits in the pews with us
yeah, that's
and
so good.
spends time. And I think that witness of how much he needs Jesus, you
Yeah,
know,
because he's
right,
not getting adoration if he's in the confessional the whole time during adoration.
yeah. Yeah. And that was what he told us, as a staff. He's just like, I need time, he's like, and he does this. I mean, he actually has a chapel, with Jesus in the rectory, but even so, he's like, there's something different about praying with the community,
Yeah.
before Jesus. And so yeah, daily adoration. So beautiful that you can do that. But just that prayer time. One of the things I told people during the pandemic in particular is I said, you can go to adoration every day, even if you don't have a perpetual adoration chapel, in
Yes.
which there's perpetual adoration that's streamed online 24/7.
Yes, I was seeing some of those.
Yep. And, so even if you are homebound, you still
Hmm.
can go and spend that time.
Yeah.
But so often we don't do it.
No.
So I'm so
I think
glad you
I was
do.
reading Saint Faustina's diary, and at one point she is asking Jesus like how long he lasts like within her body, um, between communions, and he's like, "I'm with you fully from one communion to the next, like whenever it is." So like, I think the church teaches like it's only 15 minutes that like the host is like present
Mhm.
in it, but like Jesus like was to Faustina being like, "I will be there in your heart from the moment of one communion to the next time you get to another one, provided no mortal sin," I suppose was his obvious caveat. But
Mhm.
I think about that a lot whenever I can't get to adoration, or whenever life gets really busy. That's like I could just dwell, like sit and just be present to Jesus within me because
Mhm.
I had communion, so he's gonna be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in addition to, of course, allowing the creator to fill you with creative, ideas and passion for beauty that you want to share, um, where else do you get some nourishment? Do you have favorite books or movies or
Oh
even
boy.
TV shows or oh, it sounds like we're going to go down a rabbit hole here.
No, I don't. Oh, I don't know. I'm so bad with these questions.
Oh
My
no!
go-to always is Lord of the Rings because
Oh
I just love
yes.
Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the Cimmerillion in particular.
Okay.
I don't
Mm,
like any of his other books, oops, besides the Cimmerillion, because it's this great like folk tale, like story around the campfire told towards the children of Middle Earth. And this guy's narrating this grand story. And Tolkien puts like he's Catholic and he puts all of the Catholicism into the origin story in the Cimmerillion that you like don't get in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Um and it is just really fun to see it unfold. So I think, yeah, that one. It's my go-to answer too, though.
well, it's interesting because you might find so Amazon did this new, Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, the Rings of Power.
yes.
I
And
was enjoying that.
yeah, exactly. And so many people didn't like it. And I think it's because it's hearkening more towards the Silmarillion
You have
than
to
it
know a
is,
bit more.
yeah,
I
and
think
than
it
it
was on the Book of Lost Tales. And then I was talking to a friend, she said they specifically couldn't use the Cimmerillion, like the
Mhm,
rights weren't given. So it's like kind of a weird, they have to weave around certain plot lines to like,
mhm,
they're not supposed to talk about them.
right.
Sounds like a mess on that end, but I enjoyed it as it came.
Mhm,
It was kind of fun to
yeah.
see like who would these characters be that they haven't fully revealed, and guessing
Mhm.
what Sauron was.
No, exactly. But another piece of it, though, is that I think it's in the, kind of in the spirit of the Silmarillion of how they're telling the tale, and
Yeah.
I think that's what drew me in because I'm going. I don't care what the story, quote unquote, is supposed to be. I'm
Yeah.
fine with this story, and you're giving me, such a beautiful backdrop. And then there's those echoes, towards, oh, look there, here's how Mordor came to be,
Yeah.
thing.
Totally.
Um, so, but
It's like
those,
true epics will relate kind of almost in any guise that they're under.
mhm,
And they'll relate to people like across generations, which is what good art does, is that it's
mhm.
relatable for everybody at any time.
Yeah. And so speaking of other art and quote TV shows, The Chosen,
I
have
have not been watching that.
that's okay. That's okay. Have you watched any of it?
I watch some clips. I'm usually not a fan of how people depict Jesus, so it's been kind of hard for me to
Mhm.
like want to watch it, but I've heard only glowing reviews, so
Yeah.
I should give it a
No,
chance, really.
I highly encourage it because of exactly what you were just saying, of where they are giving it an epic feel by
Mhm.
virtue of the content that they're sharing, but they're making it so that our modern time and place can relate. I liken it to what John Paul II did with theology of the body. What
Mm.
he taught in theology of the body has been a part of the church
Yeah.
teaching for forever, but he took it and he crafted it in such a way that we now are able to understand it because it's speaking in our language. And that's what I see Chosen doing.
That's
Um,
really
and
cool.
so it's really beautiful. There you go. Lenten
Yeah.
tennis for you. You have to go and watch someone depict Jesus. And
Yeah.
Jonathan Rumi is doing a beautiful job, just as Jim Caviezel did in The Passion of the Christ.
I
Um,
have also I watched recently one random episode with a few people, and I love their depiction of the apostles, and that's another thing that people have
mhm.
been pointing out. And yeah, I
Yeah.
think I would, for any hesitation I have with Jesus, I think I'd like it for the apostles just by
Yeah.
themselves. So
Um, but as I was saying, I think Jonathan Rumi is nailing it. And I don't think there's any coincidence that both Jim Caviezel and Jonathan Rumi are both Catholic.
me too. Yeah,
No
that is a
coincidence.
necessary.
I think it gets you as close as possible to the fullness of what it is that, of who
Yeah.
Jesus, possibly could be. So I'm just going to ask this, just for a little bit of fun, but what are you hoping for Outpouring of Trust? What are your hopes for the future? What difference do you want Outpouring of Trust to make, for people in the world?
That is such a loaded question. So
Of
many layers.
course,
I'm
of course.
constantly thinking of the future and what I could do with it. But I think at the core of it, I just want to serve the lady of the church and the church in whatever way that I can. So that's like growing in sacred art, perfecting, not perfecting, I suppose, growing in my skills. I
Hmm.
could never be perfect, but growing my skills and being
Becoming a
able to,
master. Yeah.
yes,
Hmm.
to put
Yeah.
it casually.
Yeah.
But to be able to create art for churches, in kind of that grand scale that I love of the masters.
Hmm.
And then just continuing to share the rosary and different chaplets with people, and kind of just continuing to do more. And then of course that litany project is like, though you were talking about the writing pieces that God's like you should just do. That's one where like it's just so big, so amazing, and I just keep getting drawn back to it. So that
Hmm.
one, in some way, shape, or form, who knows what the end result exactly will be.
Hmm.
But getting the litany painted would be the big one.
Wonderful. So where can people go and learn more?
I have a website, outpouringoftrust.com. My Instagram, I have two of them, outpouringoftrust.sacredart and then outpouringoftrust.rosaries. If you just search Outpouring of Trust, it pops up. I have Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, but that one is very dead. I want to get back into that, but it's not there yet.
Mhm.
But pretty much everywhere, Outpouring of Trust. So there you go.
Wonderful. Well, it has been such a joy. I can't believe that our time is already up. But it has been such a joy to have you on the podcast, Monica. And I am so glad that our Lord has stirred your heart to be able to share beauty with others. And you do it beautifully, to use that term. So I was going to go all in with that one.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
I'm so glad. And so for everybody, I'm going to put the links in the show notes, but make sure that you go and check out outpouringoftrust.com, and also check out outpouringoftrust.sacredrosaries.sacredart on Instagram in order to learn more. And for everyone who's been listening, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you found this to be edifying and has helped you in your pursuit of being able to do whatever it takes so that together we can tell the master of death, not today. God bless everybody.